Zion as a marketplace is kind of a hybrid. You have you can have your own store that you can send people to that acts a lot like your website. We have retailers who just forward their domain to their Zion store and don't have a website otherwise. Then we have retailers who just do both. And we're like, there's really no downside. You might as well get your products up here. We do a lot of the marketing for you, the Google ads to all the products. You're part of a bigger group that has better SEO, better marketing power, better understanding. You have to pay for that.
The following is brought to you by Thryv, the end-to-end client experience platform that helps you get the job, manage the job, and get credit.
Hey, this is Gordon Henry at Winning on Main Street. And this week, we're really fortunate to spend some time with Dan Fairbanks. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, we're thrilled. So quick intro on Dan. Dan is a visionary entrepreneur working to fundamentally change how local retail and e-commerce businesses work. He started multiple companies, including a running store chain, an e-commerce marketplace, and a point-of-sale software company. Knowing firsthand how hard it is to succeed as a local retailer and small e-commerce store, Dan's now on a mission to create a world where shopping small retail is remarkable and operating a small retail business in person or online is low risk, profitable, and fun. To achieve this mission, Dan wants to fundamentally change the way small retailers finance their inventory and educate retailers on the core changes they can make to thrive as a small business. So your company is called, or one of your companies is called XION, XION, and you're really using technology to change the small retail experience. So can you explain what XION does?
So Zion does three things that kind of work together. Zion started as an e-commerce marketplace. So Zion.store is the website. For clarity, it's not .store.com, just Zion.store. And we started with this marketplace, and that's what we sold first and got retailers really excited about was, hey, what if we could get you online without the hassle of figuring out even a template-based system like Shopify or BigCommerce, or there's a whole bunch of other ones. It's like, let's just put you on a marketplace. Now, it's like, well, what about Amazon? Like, why can't they just get on Amazon? And the limitation there was the brands and specialty retail don't allow that. They're like, no, you can't do that. But our model, we have relationships with the brands. We're like, we're different. We're going to treat our retailers differently than Amazon. We're going to treat you differently than Amazon. Amazon has a lot of things that really makes brands upset. This is a different marketplace that takes that into account. So
you really compete now with somebody like Shopify, right? And what makes you a compelling value proposition for the small retailer?
And Shopify is a competitor and also not. So a lot of our retailers do both. They have like a Shopify store and they put stuff up on Zion. So, on your own store, you can control everything. And on Zion, you're part of a marketplace. Now Zion as a marketplace is kind of a hybrid. You can have your own store that you can send people to that acts a lot like your website. We have retailers who just forward their domain to their Zion store and don't have a website otherwise. Then we have retailers who just do both. And we're like, there's really no downside. You might as well get your products up here. We do a lot of the marketing for you, the Google ads to all the products. You're part of a bigger group that has better SEO, better marketing power, better understanding. You have to pay for that. We work out a deal where we'll take a cut where no matter what you win, you're never going to lose. We're going to take that off your plate. And we're going to see if we can't get you enough sales that it's an add-on to whatever you're doing. It's an addition to, but it's never taking away. And so that's how the marketplace works. It's kind of like let's get you on there. Let's get your products on there. Let's see if we can sell some stuff for you. We're going to take a cut of those sales at a margin that makes sense. And we'll drive the traffic and we'll do the marketing and everybody wins.
So how does this all help the consumer in dealing with the local business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And really everything kind of stems out of that. So even though I think about solving retailers' problems, and even brands at this point, there's more to it there. It's also like, how does this ultimately impact the consumer? And how does that compete in the marketplace against someone like an Amazon, right? So with Zion.store, the specific impact there is it allows a consumer to look up a product and we localize where they are and list the retailers that have it in stock locally. So that way they are having just a real-time database of what's where. And instead of having to have it, like sure you can get it online and get it shipped in 1 to 2 days, or maybe you just want to go pick it up, or you want to go talk to a salesperson. That's what a lot of specialty retail is about, is that it's an item that is worth talking to someone about. And sometimes you just want to pick something up, and I get it. But you could also often do, you can do like in-store pickups. You could buy it online and just come pick it up, so you don't have to waste a bunch of time waiting for something. And even some of our retailers offer delivery, which could be same day delivery. So you order by a certain time of day, and you can just have it delivered same day by somewhere locally, which is, there's a lot of efficiencies there. For the customer, it's a gain of time where you don't have to waste all this time with it, but there's also a gain of like logistics. It's more efficient logistics use, right? So shipping stuff all over the place doesn't make a ton of sense, but if it's already close to you, we can just go from point to point. That's actually the most efficient way to get it to you in the shortest period of time. So that ends up competing actually head to head with Amazon, because you're saying I can get something to you right away, and if you care, you benefit the local community. There's a shop owner that's benefiting from that sale that's in your community. It's not just Amazon. So a lot of our focus recently hasn't been, how do we get a small retailer to sell as much products as possible online? It's how do we augment their online sales to their customers with their customers, and extend that so they get that customer coming back more often, more interested, telling friends about the whole experience. Like, that's how you help a local retailer grow and compete, versus like trying to see if you can double their sales by selling as many products as possible online.
Now, does the technology you offer help the service part of their business?
There's an iPad app that allows them to track their work orders in a Trello-like board, if anyone's familiar with Trello, where they have little cards that they can track their whole backlog in. They're in progress, they're complete, and as they move a card from one column to the other, it automatically triggers a custom text message that they want to send the customer, and let them know that their item is being worked on, their item's in stock, or there's some issue with it, like, oh hey, we realize as we started to work on your bike that there is this problem. We're going to need this part, we're going to have to order it. So they can start communicating via text with their customer just right in the app. And that's been game changing for these retailers, because on the service side, it gets rid of all their phone calls. They spend hours making phone calls, and now they spend seconds making text messages that are pre-filled, and they just hit send. And customers get those text messages. For phone calls, people usually don't answer their phone from a number that's not already in it. And they often even don't listen to the voicemails when left. And so the communication often gets lost. So this really improves the customer side of things, because they see that communication. It's real time. They know what's going on. And it's all digitally tracked. Everything's digitally tracked and understood and easy to work for. And then they can just take payment at the end. So that has been a really beneficial service-based piece of what we do that we kind of stumbled into. It wasn't something I was thinking about ahead of time, because in running, like, we didn't have service, like that wasn't something we did. But when I started working with bike shops and ski shops, you're like, well, this is a big part of my business, and there's sort of software for it, but it's never been great. And I was like, I think I could do better. So it honestly was one of the easier things we built, but one of the most impactful things we built.
So how about the support side? I mean, you said before, small business people in general, small retailers, aren't necessarily super techie. They like what it can do for them, but they don't necessarily have that skill set. Is there a learning curve to using what XION has to offer? And how do you support the small business who wants to use what you have to offer, but needs some coaching and training?
Yeah, so honestly, I think this is where my perspective on technology comes into play, and what XION is built around. It's all meant to be really intuitive and easy to use. And so if for example, if a retail shop is hiring someone who's younger, that younger person probably needs zero training on it. Just put them in front of it, and it'll feel as familiar as any other app. Now, the retail shop owner, manager, who might be a little bit older and a little less technology savvy, like, if they've got a smartphone, it's still as familiar and as comfortable as using any other app on their smartphone. So what we do is we set them up. We still give them an hour training of like here's what you really need to know to use this software. But frankly, we rarely have questions after that. And even then, it's often overkill. Sometimes I'll get a follow-up like, oh, I was looking for how to do this. And then I'll just explain it really quick and they got it and they move on. But most of the time, like it's just really intuitive. And that is kind of the reasoning behind it versus a lot of the other software. You really do need training to know how to use it properly. And that's just the philosophy I use. There's a philosophy in design, software design called "Don't make me think." Right? That's the philosophy we use when we design our software. Like they shouldn't have to think about what they need to do in order to do it. It should just be like, yeah, that makes sense.
When we come back, we're going to ask Dan what he's up to next, and he's got some exciting things to talk about where he's going with his next business. So stay with us.
This episode is brought to you by Govcon Winners, the leading company in training you to become a multi-million-dollar government contractor. The founder of Govcon Winners, Kizzy Parks, who was on a recent episode of Winning on Main Street, has been awarded over $50 million in government contracts. She believes everyone in every business has something to offer the federal government, and that means you. If you've never heard of government contracting before, you've just started, or you've been in it for a while, Kizzy's proven system will diversify your income, create more options for your business, and enable you to have more security than ever before. Whatever it is you and your business provides, don't miss out on the countless opportunities to sign on with the government and boost your revenue today. Go to www.govconwinners.com now to join the waitlist for the upcoming programs.
And we're back with Dan Fairbanks. Really interesting story about finding his way to build a fascinating technology company, really a retail system for small retailers. So we talked before the show, in addition to everything you're doing with XION, you've got your eyes on a new company, a new opportunity. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so as I was working on XION and meeting with retailers, I started to understand their biggest and most their biggest pains. Like, what is the biggest pain of running a business? What are your costs sucked up into? What causes you to struggle financially? And so as I did that research, I also met somebody, his name's Tyler, who had been a brand, and he sold products into retailers, and he had his own set of problems as he was growing his brand, which eventually he grew relatively big and sold and had a nice exit. But as we kind of got together and brainstormed on the strategies, we realized that there was a huge opportunity to solve some major financial problems for retailers and brands through something called vendor managed inventory. Now, vendor managed inventory was a term we had to discover way down the road. We had other ways of calling it for a while, but it exists at the Walmart level. And what vendor managed inventory is it's when a vendor actually manages the inventory at the retail level, and then and with the added benefit of pay on scan. This is another term that's used at the kind of high level, is that you don't pay as a retailer, you don't pay for the product until it's sold. And what this allows is for the retailer to reduce all their inventory risk pretty much down to nothing. If they could do all their products on vendor managed inventory, pay on scan, they would have no inventory risk. Now there's some, they do sign over some liability to say, hey, I'm responsible for this inventory if it's stolen or whatever, but they just can carry insurance for that. And then the brands, so that's a big benefit to the retailer. So now they can actually stock better, stock bigger, or stock more often the products that are really selling, and reduce all this capital that's tied up in inventory, which is a huge problem for retailers. I was talking to a retailer the other day, and they were like, oh, I used to carry apparel. He's like like 3 bike shops. He's like, I used to carry apparel really deep. I had a big apparel selection, and it was doing really well for me until I had all this apparel I couldn't sell, had to sell it at a discount. And in the end, I didn't make any money, lost a little bit of money. And so I stopped carrying apparel. And I'm like, but the apparel, if you think about it, it's Keystone margin. So maybe it's a $50 shirt that you had to pay $25 for, but the brand's risk on that shirt is only $5, maybe less, right? And so the brand has a lot less exposure by having more product out there. They still made money, even when the products that didn't sell, but the retailer didn't. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So retailers are afraid to carry a lot of items because of that, which means products are not getting in front of retailers when they should be. This is a really good example. Apparel and bike shops is actually a really big one. It's really common with that scenario. And Vendor managed inventories allows those retailers to carry a whole category they may not even carry and make money on it. And the brand still makes money on it because now the brand is in front of a lot more customers. Those are a really good example of what that does for brands and retailers. And that's what helps the brand. Again, that's the benefit of the brand, is they can get into more stores with more products. The other thing that's a major problem that this solves is retailers, they don't always realize this, but they're not usually good at managing inventory. There are exceptions, and they're usually the ones who do really well. But most retailers are focused on the customer and the customer experience and manage. They just don't use data to run their business. They kind of like, oh, I kind of see what's going out the door and I buy more of it. And instead, what we're saying is with vendor managed inventory, the brand really cares. They really care about what's in the store, what's selling. And so we give brands that data. They have a dashboard. They can see the data. They know what's selling, what's not selling, and they can keep that retailer stocked with what's selling. If it's not selling, they can pull it back. They can put it somewhere where it is, or they can blow it out somewhere else where they don't lose money. But the retailer would have had to lose money at those prices, but the brand would lose money. And they're not diluting that brand's equity with that retailer by having to discount all the time. So this allows brands to get into more stores, have better data, run their whole manufacturing process different because they know exactly what's selling in real time. And they're in control of making sure it's out there in front of the customer. And with retailers, not having to take on the inventory risk, now more retailers are willing to take those products. So we're currently, this is something we're launching in the first quarter of next year. And right now we are collecting brands and retailers to be on our wait list. We cover pretty much every industry. When we launch, we haven't decided exactly which industries we're going to like within retail that we're going to focus on, but at some point we're going to focus on some industries to make sure we have a lot of the brands and retailers within the same industry really matched up properly. But we're taking everyone from every industry to get on our wait list because this is game changing. This is a complete paradigm shift of, instead of doing business on purchase orders and accounts receivable and accounts payable, this just gets rid of that altogether and is a completely different model for doing business that much better aligns the brands and the retailers.
Fascinating stuff, Dan. So we just have a few minutes left. I want to ask you a few more personal questions, what I call it the lightning round, just some things we'd like to know more about you as a person. So first question is, do you have a mentor or a person you've learned from who helped you along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think seeking after mentors is a really important thing to shortcut your growth. You can learn a lot faster if you seek out mentors. One of my first mentors that I had as an entrepreneur is John Richards. He was one of my college professors at BYU and has been a longtime mentor of mine and an investor. More recently, Chris Crone is one of my best mentors and someone who I love learning everything I can from. And he's someone who's had a lot of mentors. So like mentors who have mentors, it's a really great setup and system. And those are some of my favorite mentors who've influenced my life. And then the last thing I'll mention, my dad. My dad's been a great mentor, someone who's been a great example of someone who's been an entrepreneur and has built a very successful business during his lifetime and career, and someone who's very generous, very abundant, and gives back. And those are examples to me that are really important.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Whenever we talk about small businesses, this issue of managing your time always becomes a big deal. Small businesses are sort of famous for, kind of having too many things to do, not enough time to do it. What's your secret to managing your time?
Delegation. I delegate a lot of the things that someone else can do better to someone else. And the way that I think about that, there's a formula to delegation when there's a good time to delegate and a good time not to. You have to think about how you value your time and what value is your time for what you're doing. And everything that is not the top value and the top 10 or 20% of what you do, you should delegate to somebody else because it's called time arbitrage. So if you're worth $50 an hour to do something, delegate stuff that's anything less than that to somebody else, because then you could spend 100% of your time doing $50 an hour kind of activities, and that allows you to manage your time much better. This is something that Chris Crone taught me. You're talking about mentors. This is something he taught me that's changed my life.
Yeah, great example. Thanks. And last of those quick questions, do you have a favorite hobby or pastime when you do have some free time? You mentioned you're in Hawaii. I imagine there's some things you could do there.
Yeah, I moved to Hawaii recently. I do love to be in the ocean. I've been getting into surfing. I've always enjoyed water sports, so wakeboarding, surfing, stuff behind the boat. So like wake surfing is something I've also done a lot of. And then I also enjoy snowboarding, which is sort of a water sport, but it's frozen water, right? So I love board sports. That's something that's like one of my favorite things to do. I also am very adventurous. I love to travel and visit new places. Those are a big part of it. So I spend a lot of my time when I have free time. That's what I do.
Very cool. Well, it's been great getting to know you, Dan. Really, really great story. And I'm sure of interest to a lot of the small businesses who tune into this show. How should entrepreneurs learn more about getting involved with you and XION, which again is XION, folks, not ZION, XION? How should they find you and get in touch with you?
There's a couple ways. I mean, if they go to danfairbanks.com, it'll kind of link them to all the different things that I work on, and then they can find links to XION and links to Thatch, which is the vendor managed inventory stuff. XION.store is the website for that. And then if you're a retailer, if you scroll to the bottom, and you can click on a link to go to the kind of the retail oriented stuff or the brand oriented stuff. And Thatch.tech is the website for the vendor managed inventory. Those are all the different ways that someone can get a hold of me. But if you want to remember one, danfairbanks.com, it'll link to everything.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Dan. Great to have you here, and continued good luck with XION and Thatch.
Great. Thanks. I really appreciate you having me. I had a great time.
And I want to thank our producer, Tim Alleman, and our coordinators, DeEtte Barnett and Daniel Huddleston. They do a great job. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your colleagues, friends, and family to subscribe. And please leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate it and helps us in the rankings. Until next time, make it a great week.